I now recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Crenshaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We all know the FDA plays a very critical role in protecting the health and safety of Americans, but we also know some of the systems have not kept up with modern science and consumer needs. It's one of the reasons I'm proud to support the bipartisan reauthorization of the over-the-counter monograph user fee program, and it has some smart updates to it. I think it helps the FDA keep everyday medicines like allergy meds, cold remedies, sunscreen safe and up to date, but without adding red tape. It brings more transparency, scientific flexibility, and accountability to a system that over 90% of Americans rely on. OTC products help people manage their health. They avoid unnecessary doctor visits, and that's good for families, good for our rural communities, it's good for a sustainable workforce. So fixing the system, making it work better for everyone, I think is in our interest. Dr. Corrigan Curray, this legislation formally allows the use of voluntary consensus standards and alternative testing methods for monograph updates. Help us understand that. How does that change the scientific flexibility and efficiency of the review process?
Well, I think the voluntary consensus standards, using those, they're known, they're transparent, they can be relied on, and alternative standards. We have asked in AMUFA 2, we want to have a new tier, what we call a tier 2 proposed order, so that we can update some of the outdated tests that may be in some of the monographs. So I think we're willing to work with that and try and use use the most up-to-date testing that gets us to the answer that we need, and of course, update some of these testing standards that were in the monographs.
We're talking about over-the-counter monographs. What about applying those kind of standards to other pathways in FDA? Do you have any comments on that? I don't want to throw you something out of left field there, but
sure. In all of us, when we're looking at any alternative method to gather data, for example, the alternatives to animal testing, we're going to use those across the board. So if they can answer a question of safety in an OTC drug, and they can answer it in a prescription drug, then we're going to use it. I would mention that, there are many places we don't, use animal studies. For example, in our biosimilar program, when we're proving new biosimilars, most of our generics don't need animal studies. Those are a lot of medications that are used every day. But any test that's fit for purpose, we'll use across for other products.
Yeah, and I'll reiterate over and over, and I hope one of our goals in this committee is well, maintaining safety standards for the American people, but making the FDA an efficient process that does not destroy the last remaining innovative industry in the world, which is in the United States. And I hope that's a goal of our administration, and I think it should be a goal of this committee. Mr. Morris, in many rural communities, access to a physician can be limited to a part-time clinic or a distant hospital. For residents in those areas, how essential is it to have reliable over-the-counter medications available for managing common health needs? And to follow up, are you hearing concerns, whether from patients, providers, states, that outdated or ineffective OTC drugs are still in circulation simply because the FDA hasn't had the resources to review them?
Congressman, thank you for that question. It's outside of my knowledge base. I defer to my colleague at FDA on that. I would think the same challenges.
Feel free to jump in if that's fine.
We're overseeing and looking at the safety effectiveness. As you know, we have an order to update the acetaminophen safety for a rare side effect. We also have the proposed phenylephrine order we're trying to work through, which would, on efficacy, the lack of efficacy there. And so we also, on our agenda, we're going to do some updates in the pediatric dosing for acetaminophen by weight-based, as well as, update NSAIDs so for some issues for pregnant women. So we're continuing to work through, and I think, we're effectively making sure that they are safe and effective.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I have more questions. I'm almost out of time, so I yield back.